Yeah, I'm Uncle Bubby, and we're going to learn to smoke the pork ribs, brisket, and chicken. We're going to prep it, season it, learn what type of woods to use. Even if you don't want to buy a large smoker, we're going to show you how to use your backyard charcoaler to smoke meats. Regardless of whether you smoke or charcoal, we also have a great sauce that goes with that. This is one that I've developed. It took me 2 years to develop the flavor. It's a good sweet and smoky sauce. It's thick. It's a natural sauce. There are no preservatives in it. We don't use any animal byproducts in it. One of the nice things about it, it can be used by vegetarians. Instead of using anchovy paste in our sauce, like a lot of sauces do, we use raisin paste. This gives it a little thicker, richer flavor, and it will stay on your meat. The hot and mild both have the same flavor, with the exception the hot has just enough heat to change the flavor a little bit. The hot is not really a very hot type of sauce. It's a very mild hot. It would probably be a number 3 or 4 on a 1 to 10 scale. You can mess up a little bit on your cooking of your meats, your chickens or whatever, and kind of cover up that mistake by using a good sauce. And we think ours is excellent. What you do is you end up putting a base coat down in there at the fire, and you can use an older, drier wood to get that started with. And once you get a good build up, then you put your smoking wood on, because that'll make coals pretty quick. And today we're using pecan. Okay, we've got a good fire base built up now, and I went ahead and put some of the regular smoking wood in, which is a pecan. And we'll bring the smoking chamber up to 225 to 250. When it reaches that point, we can go ahead and put our ribs in. This is our water chamber we put water in here. It holds about 8 gallons of water. And what we do is it builds, whenever it builds up enough heat in the firebox, it'll start boiling this water, and it'll steam out into the smoking chamber. And it'll help keep the meat moist, and that chamber moist, so you don't have a bunch of real dry meat. And the way I smoke my meats, the method I use also keeps them moist, so that you don't have a dry meat. And I'll show you that too. That's another one of my secrets. I never put the meat directly on the grill. The juice will just fall out and go down into your grill. This is one of the trade secrets I use. I form a pan out of tin foil, put sides up on it so it holds the meat juices as it comes out of the meat when it cooks. And it also keeps the rub that you put in there, it keeps recirculating the rub back into the meat so you don't lose it off. Okay, on the back you can see that the ribs themselves run right along here. And that's where we're going to be cutting this upper portion off. This is the rib ends where the gristle is, and then we'll have kind of an even portion of just ribs. It's not hard to do. You just start with there and kind of draw you a line through there. You can hear the ribs crunch. There's rib ends. There's a St. Louis style cut. There are different choices of seasonings. Some people use dry rubs, which I prefer, and some people use wet rubs. Now the wet rubs are mainly vinegar, so you actually get a vinegar taste to your meat. Most generally, if you don't like that sour flavor or an off flavor, then it's best to go ahead and just use a dry rub. You don't have to put a whole bunch on. I just use a cheese shaker, put it inside and shake it out. I found out I was losing a lot of it by trying to apply it by hand. And my son bought me one of these things for Father's Day, and it's been great. But you can overcoat, and you'll see a lot of the people on TV putting a whole bunch on and packing it in, and you can't even see the meat. But as I say, if you use too much, it'll burn. tend to burn. The type of seasoning I use is a rub from Texas. It's made by Atkins. It's an Atkins barbecue spice rub. Hard to come by in Oklahoma, but you have to go to Texas to get it, or get a hold of me. I can get it for you. Also get a hold of me and get my barbecue sauce. It allows you to open up in 4 different positions, and it'll pull more air in and circulate it without losing your heat. If your door was totally open, a lot of your heat would just come out the front. It wouldn't heat up your rack, your smoking chamber. But if you leave it open a small amount, you'll still get a heat loss and the flames will come in. But when the flames are coming out, that shows you're getting a lot of air circulation, so it's heating up the firebox. And it'll bring your temperature up a little faster. If I left this open like this, probably in about 10 minutes it could be up to about 285 to 300. A lot of people tend to think they want to put the barbecue sauce on the meat when they first start smoking it. You don't want to do that. You'll get a burnt piece of meat, because barbecue sauce has sugar in it, and even a small amount, and it'll tend to start burning or charring. If you're grilling, you can cook your meat about halfway finished, and then add your sauce to it and finish your cooking, and you'll be okay. Just be sure and rotate it. The thing about smoking, though, you want to go ahead and get it smoked and done, and then add your sauces to it after you get it to the table. It's a real worked, exercise piece of meat on the beef, so therefore it's a tough piece. The more you work the meat, or the more they work their muscle, the tougher the cut is. And that's why tenderloins are so good, because they don't work those too much. They're in the middle of the back. This is a pre-trimmed brisket that I use, and I like it because there's not as much fat to contend with. You lose about 60 to 65% of your meat, or your actual weight of the brisket, on an untrimmed brisket. If you do prefer those, one of the best things to do when you go pick one of them up is to take it, the big one, and bend it like that. If it's real flexible, that means there's less fat on the interior portion of the meat. If it's real stiff, well, that means there's a lot of fat in it, so I'd go looking for another one, because you're going to lose even more. Because when fat is cold, it's harder and it's hard to bend. So that's how to tell when you get less fat. I use the same seasoning on the brisket that I used on the chicken and the ribs. This little bit of fat cap, what they call fat cap on the outer portion of the brisket, is really needed. It helps moisturize. It keeps the moisture and also flavors the meat. Brisket takes about 8 hours to smoke in a 225 to 250 degree smoking chamber. The last 2 hours, after about 6 hours of smoking, you can take it into the house and cover it up with tin foil, put it in the oven, and finish baking it at 250 for another 2 hours, and it'll really tenderize. What I normally do is the last 2 hours or so of smoking time, I'll cover it with tin foil in the smoking chamber, and it'll do the same thing. It just recirculates its juices, but in the form of a little bit of steam, and it's more condensed steam, so therefore it tenderizes the meat a little more. Okay, we're getting pretty close to the temperature we need to smoke at, close to 225. We'll go ahead and put the meat on. It'll drop the temperature temporarily, and then it'll come back up, and we can go ahead and pretty well control the temperature once it comes back up. It's very easy to control with this smoker. Today we're using a Kingfisher smoker. It's manufactured in Kingfisher, Oklahoma by a gentleman named, last name of Yoder. It's Ora Yoder. He's been manufacturing these things for quite a while. It has a baffle in it that prevents the fire from the firebox from actually going into the smoking chamber. It has the steamer that keeps the meats, helps keep the meats moist. It has 6 racks in it that rotate like a Ferris wheel. And as I said, that rotation helps keep the heat in the smoking chamber even. It stirs it and helps keep it even. And it rotates at about 1 RPM. I use tin foil, as I said before, in there to, I don't put the meat directly on the racks, and the foil will go ahead and collect the liquid from the ribs. Whenever you first load it, you want to load it every other rack, just to kind of evenly distribute the weight. When I'm working with chicken, my fingers will end up getting all wrinkled. They're so wet because I wash my hands so much. You need to wash it when you're working with any poultry product because of the dangers of salmonella. And you don't want to cross-contaminate any other meat you have. So usually when you're preparing several different types of meat, you want to do your beef or pork first, and then your chicken last. When we're preparing chicken for the smoker, I usually split them in 2. And I go through and I cut the tail off, and then we cut the backbone out. The easiest way to do that is have a good sharp knife and run it right down along the edge, down through the cavity, and it cuts right along the ribs. Once we get the backbone split out, you just put a little weight on the center from the inside, and that'll go ahead and split the other bones. Then you've got 2 chicken halves. And what I usually do is I'll start with the chicken skin side up. Check the fire here, make sure everything's coming out okay. Just move it around and put some in. Get it going. I'm going to add another log to it so that it burns better instead of just 2 bites. Okay. We can just set these in, these end pieces. It's pretty well evened out now, so we can go ahead and just put them in the first available open space. Smoker's starting to get loaded. It's got 10 chickens, 6 racks of ribs, and 3 briskets in it right now. And we could get a little more in there if we needed to. Whenever you're smoking this amount of meat, normally if you take the meat after it cools down and put it in the refrigerator, it starts losing its flavor. So what's best is get something like a vacuum packing machine, Tilia Food Saver or something like that, like you see advertised on TV. They work real well. You let it come down to temperature and then go ahead and vacuum pack it. Then you can freeze it or put it in the refrigerator for a while. And if you freeze it, you can just heat it up in a microwave or thaw it out in water and then put it in the oven and reheat it. And you still have your good flavor. You've had meats up to 2 years old with good flavor on them when we open them back up. So this is good too, because if you do a large catering, you're going to have to preserve that meat for a week or so Then you can go ahead and vacuum pack it, and then you can give it to them. Go ahead and thaw it out and give it to them in a couple of tin trays, and just have them put a little bit of water in the bottom, put the meat in the tray, and then cover it with tin foil and heat it up in the oven, and they won't know the difference. For those of you who don't want to use an outdoor or buy an outdoor smoker, you can always use your backyard charcoaler. The way you do that is go ahead and take your top grill out, place your charcoal on one end instead of the whole area, and then go ahead and get it fired up. When the coals get hot, they come up to temperature, go ahead and get a cast iron skillet or a heavy-duty metal cake pan of some type and put some water-soaked chips, wood chips, your hickory, oak, or pecan, into there, and they'll start smoking a little bit. Go ahead and place your rack back in on top, and on the opposite end of where your heat is, go ahead and put your meat in there using the tray method. You want to go ahead and rotate your meat a little more often using this method because it is a little closer to the heat, and you might scorch your meat a little bit, but you do get a good smoke flavor, and you can have a successful smoke by doing it this way. When you cut your meats, you'll notice what they call a smoke ring on your brisket, and meats like that is just a pink ring around the outer edge. That shows the penetration of the smoke, and that's what you want to see. And when you smoke chickens or turkey, any poultry like that, it can be totally done, but a lot of people think it's not done because it stays pink. It will stay pink, and it looks like it might be raw around the bones, but it's really not. It's reached that high peak temperature internally, and when you smoke a half a chicken for 4 hours, that's plenty done. See how the bones are starting to pull and show on the ribs? That shows that the meat's shrinking up and it's starting to get tender. See, that just falls apart there. So those are ready. See how that fell apart? The chickens have been on about 4 hours, and they're done. Also, another way you can tell a chicken's done is poke it, and if the juice runs out clear, especially in the thigh meat, if the juice runs out clear and not red, then you're okay. Same way there. See, now here you'll get a little, that's a little warm to handle, but here, see how it's pink on the inside? The juices are clear, but the meat's pink, but the meat is done.
That's the brisket?
That's the brisket. I just rotated it once. Okay, we're going to vacuum pack some of the meat. The way I do that is seal one end of the bag. Cut it to the length I'm going to be using it. Okay, the reason we go ahead and cut these and slice them prior to vacuum packing is that once it's sealed and vacuum packed and frozen, then all they have to do is heat it up, and it's already sliced for them. Okay, I'll set this inside the chamber, clip it down. There we have it. Sealed bag ready to freeze. Once that's frozen, you can keep it for probably a year and a half or so without losing its flavor. The name Uncle Bubby, I want to tell you a little story about that. When I was growing up, my sister called me Bubby, and when she grew up and got married, had some girls, they began calling me Uncle Bubby. Well, one in particular kept calling me Uncle Bubby, and when I developed my barbecue sauce, we thought that would be a real cute name for it. So we went ahead and named it Uncle Bubby. Okay, this video is not only for those who smoke, it's also for those who, well, that isn't what I was going to say either, was it? Happy barbecuing.